Hello. It's our
Hello?
second episode of Vision Denial, proper for Worlds 2021. My name is Sam, and over here is Connor. And we would have Josh, but Josh is running a little behind in Worlds VODs and scheduling. So likely we won't have him for until like the next two episodes. We'll see. He'll be here before the end of Worlds happens. For all of you who don't know, this is Vision Denial. We do a whole bunch of stuff on international league competitions, trends, stats, whole shebangle, and what we expect, and kind of our most of our thoughts regarding what's going on and some predictions and all the rest of it. And today, we would usually discuss things before groups have happened, but groups has already happened on the first day, so we've got some interesting stuff happening. Most and foremost, the Kings are back in town. Every Korean team has had their Demon King absolutely demolish their laning opponent.
Okay.
Yeah,
That is fair.
In what I can only describe as unfortunately disappointing, but kind of expected, only kind of expected results of each Korean team having players that are better role for role in their first game of the first day. Some notable exceptions to that being Damwon Kia versus FPX, and I think it was the Gen G versus LNG. Those were the two games that were not expected to have super high swing, and yet swiped through. Now, there's not a lot to discuss regarding those games, other than the same thing that we can discuss about all of the games. So I will start off our discussions today with, how did you feel about drafts this today?
I think I got same as we did at the beginning of plans, where you get to the beginning of the first game and you just see that first pick Yuumi, and you're like, this kind of sets the mood for the whole day.
Yeah.
This is what we're getting. This is what we're doing. And I haven't seen it that much before. I haven't played with or against it or anything, but I like Misfortune Yuumi more than Misfortune Momu.
Oh,
just because it's doing the opposite thing. It still sets up with her ultimate because once the root lands, you can ult over it. Cool. They're both really long range, right? Just they both have the same distance shooting forward. Cool. But it's better in lane when it's okay, we double comet, both of us hit Q, there goes your health bar, right? It's this oppressive thing in lane where you get hit by a double up and UB Qs and stuff so it's cool. It's an interesting. It's the same champion. We're still seeing the Misfortune, but being used more for its laning pressure and its roaming pressure, getting the Yuumi around the map to get two other champions like the Assassins. And I think with Assassins coming back in the meta, Yuumi kind of makes sense to go with them, because we always saw when the Akali, when the the Talon, that we're seeing with a lot of these champions, the Leblanc, are really strong with the Yuumi on them, because it gives them a little bit more damage they need to make sure the Assassins can actually be Assassins, these kind of things. So it's
all right. Well, given that the intuitive response to the Yuumi would usually be something hyper aggressive or engage worthy,
yep.
And that hasn't seemed to have pulled off as well, and that Nami seems to be the secondary enchanter support. We've also seen a couple of hovers of Seraphine, which you've been like, why hasn't this happened yet?
I was so excited, and they didn't lock it in from T1. just because they already had the Misfortune Yuumi.
Yeah.
And if you want to land a Yuumi ult, Seraphine, Yuumi over top of each other is just perfect. It's the exact same, just like it's a box. Let's shoot the Seraphine ult, shoot the Yuumi ult. The Yuumi can be on the Seraphine so that they're the exact same hitbox. They're charmed, then they're rooted. Perfect.
Easy.
Perfect overlap. But
it honestly was surprising to me that like we didn't see as many enchanters today as granted we did see quite a bit of enchanters. It's just quite a bit of the one enchanter.
Yeah, the one game and not me. Yeah.
Right. And so I was kind of like a little baffled and wondering what you thought was. Do you think it was a reasonable response to be hesitant about the enchanters despite what seems like to be a consensus between the LCK and LCS teams really heavily leaning into it?
Well, I think also what that comes back down to is we're saying, okay, assassins are strong again, right? Like we can play assassins and actually be assassins again. Cool. So I've already talked about the first reason why that makes Yuumi good, because she can stick with the assassins. But it's also the second part of that being, if I'm playing a Nami or a Soraka and the enemy team has assassins on it, I'm in trouble, right? Because I do not have mobility. I do not really have the, enough tools to keep myself alive. Like, sure, they have stuff like if Nami lands a bubble or something, but like hitting a Nami bubble on a LeBlanc, for example, not very easy to do, right? So a lot of the regular enchanters, it's like if I play this champion, I'm at risk of just getting dove in by these assassins and hurting my team by then getting that assassin fed, right? Like I can basically cost us the game if I go 0-3 to this assassin or something, right? So Yuumi instead is like, well, because I'm on top of somebody else and I'm now untargetable, I'm not this squishy assassin squishy enchanter, that's what I meant to say, that's in danger of dying because I can just be on my teammate and I'm not going to get jumped, right? So it's kind of the best of two things. I can stay with my assassins if I have one, and I can stay away from theirs.
Okay. I think it's a little presumptuous mostly because like the enchanters and assassins used to be coexistent within the same metas for like years, for like 2-3 years at some point, where like it was expected for enchanters and assassins to be played in the same vein, right? So I don't know if it's necessarily because it becomes a liability. I think what's going on here is that there's a lack of ability for some of the laners, especially given some of like the recency of some teams still being uncomfortable with like their coordination with each other, or some of them having to have substitutes put in. I think what's going on is that, like, to me at least, when I'm seeing the teams draft, cohesiveness of drafting in the group stage is much higher than it was in the play-in stage, and this is just off of day one. And so anything that would suffer for, or that would like not gel well with that cohesiveness is usually put to the wayside. And I think it's just that they are prioritizing certain sets of drafts that they have pre-planned and that they're going to slowly expand it in the future. But I don't think that the fact that assassins of a higher priority is the reason why we have very few enchanters. In fact, that should be the reason why we have more enchanters counterintuitively, because they tend to work better in terms of like sustained and extended laning phases, which is something assassins desperately need to be able to be like turned on. And if you have an assassin in your team, you need an enchanter. And if you're going to have an assassin on the opponent's team, if the opponent does not have an enchanter, then you are significantly decreasing the amount of like sustained damage you do unless you have a utility-based solo laner.
Yes. So what I was thinking, and you can tell me if I'm flat out wrong, because it's not something we've specifically been necessarily talked about elsewhere or anything, but is that with a lot of the old like enchanter metas were a lot of like, for example, Kog'Maw was a big deal back several seasons ago.
Yeah.
I'm going pretty far back now, but when Kog'Maw and Janna kind of things like the big bot lane and stuff, where we're saying it's okay if they have an assassin, even if they get a couple of kills on a Zed or something, because it's like we're not trying to necessarily win the early game. We're trying to say we're going to get to a level 16 Kog'Maw and win, right? So it's like it's a fine if we're down, 10 to 20 or something, because we will just outscale them and win. Whereas a lot of the games in the current meta are saying like, well, if that assassin gets 3-0, we don't want that to happen and try to rely on like just outscaling them, because a lot of our games are going to be over by 25 minutes, and a lot of our games are a little bit faster paced and a little bit.
Right.
There's not such a big difference between scaling and stuff. You can't just say, okay, we're just going to outscale and sit back and deal with them later.
That's true. I think what's weird that is that teams seem to be drafting anyways with scaling in mind, right? If there's this hesitancy regarding scaling, then we wouldn't see any enchanters whatsoever. That's one of those things where like enchanters enable scaling first and foremost. I think today's, and it's one of those things where like day one of groups, you can only glean so much predictions of meta and which teams are stronger than the others, especially given that 6 of the 8 games that played today were one-sided stomps of like certain variety of clean to not clean, and those types of games are hard to have a proper read on things. Now, like, you're not entirely wrong in this situation where like making an informed decision of like scaling with enchanters, because enchanters do necessitate some form of scaling within them, that like if you're going to do like a hyper carry meta, which is I think far from what this is going to be. I thought this was going to be the case. I don't think it's a hyper carry meta. I think it's that like assassins and cleanup ADCs, because I don't think that's a category that's mostly talked about, is that like cleanup marksmans are really the focal point, with like your variety of control mages in the mid lane and a variety of top laners. But like those
playing a lot of the big AoE teamfight comps, with the AD carry, it's either the misfortunes try to help with that kind of thing, but like it's also there to be like, well, ideally as misfortune I can move fast with my strat and then queue through things and land it's like Comet, right? So it's like, okay, E plus Comet, like I'm trying to like just
yeah, exactly. Same thing with like the Dravens, the things with like easy single target that can finish off team fights.
Kills.
Right?
Sure.
And so like scaling is not the main priority. It's extended laning phases that are a priority. Like which ADCs can be sitting in a bot lane alone while enchanters are still roaming with others, right? And this is why like there's some hesitancy, because roaming is still a partial aspect of what's going on, because enchanter supports don't roam as well as like hyper engaged supports, but they also don't seem to provide more oomph, for lack of a better term. They provide a lot more utility and a lot more tools for their assassin equivalents. Now that really again depends on, are you picking an assassin in mid lane, top lane, or in jungle? And to me, what this thought process leads to is that if a team really is uncertain about the late game, they're going to be more focused on guaranteeing certain types of team fights over any extended laning phase. Because if the laning phase can't be extended for some reason, because another team has completely snowballed it out of like ridiculousness, and they're not super confident about like their ability to pull off that game plan, like most day one teams tend to be, then shit, why would you want to take that risk? So yeah, I think that like right now the teams that have picked the Yuumi had a lot more confidence in their ability to like take advantage of extended laning phases, use the utility out of Yuumi to like bolster up their composition and be able to speed the game along much faster. And I think that's why it's counterintuitive that like the enchanter supports are not necessarily for the long haul of the game, because the thing that determines that is usually if there's a hyper carry or not.
Yeah, I think another reason why something like we're seeing so much misfortune is the idea that like, okay, both teams are going to go to fight in mid lane or something. The AD carries don't necessarily come at like 8 minutes, 12 minutes, kind of things. You're right. Like they're going for those extended lane phases. And what the misfortune enables is like, well, let's say I decide, okay, my team's going to get into a fight. As misfortune, Russian Ghostblade, which gives you more out of combat move speed, I'd be like, I'm going to leave bot lane and I'm going to get there to help my team clean up the fight. You said like clean up ADCs. I can get there to have an impact on the fight that's happening elsewhere on the map much faster than the enemy AD carry can, because I'm, by 12 minutes, I'm Ghostblade Misfortune. Right? So like I have all the out of combat movement speed to make this now a 5v4 because I'm here before the enemy ADC is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just something that enables, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like if you want to go down the list of all of the other ADCs that are being picked, you've got like your Dravens, your Lucians, your Jins, and you're like, none of these are late game ADCs. These are all mid game cleanup ADCs. Because if it were really focusing on late game, we would have more Vaynes. Please don't pick Vayne. Don't pick Vayne.
Yeah, and the Jinx and the Kog'Maw. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like because we're not getting these late game ADCs, and we're not getting any utility ADCs, like we're not getting any Varuses, the Ashes.
Yeah.
To me, that just spells that like there is no focus on like late game. So like it does not matter if you're picking for team fight or for like hyperscaling. It matters on the ways that you want to approach laning phase, because before World started, laning phases were very short, and after and during Worlds, laning phases have been longer than usual.
Yeah, because like Kaisa is relevant once you've evolved Q, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you have that. If you get like, okay, we need to clean someone up, get off that isolated Q. There's the burst we need to. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not too many games to really discuss like, oh, how's the, overall meta shaping up too much. But one thing that does stand out is the 3 games of Graves top.
Yeah, that actually baffles me a little bit.
Okay.
Right? Mostly because his new auto attack passives straight up mess with his laning ability, and his ability to tower dive as a regular laner. And just
because he gets aggro.
Yeah, he gets aggro almost automatically. Does not have the kind of tank stats for it to work out very well, and it really messes with his ability to like freeze lanes. And so he is predicated on being able to be like the winning lane all the time. You have to win the game win the lane every single time for it to work out. So
it's just like it's a strong early pick, right? Like you combat power early and you get that extra armor.
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't think it's anything I'd ever be like, I'm gonna blind pick Graves top. Don't do that.
No.
But I'm pretty sure what we're seeing this is like it was swapped into later on, right? As this kind of unexpected, even though it's been done a lot, into these other AD matchups, like into the set, into the Aatrox, and into the Gnar. I think was it 3 games?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right? Okay. I'm like, just try to remember the games. I'm like, I remember the set game. Yeah. So in all those matchups, it's like usually, Gnar can try to bully some of these melee laners. Well, Gnar can't really bully the Graves. The Graves has better stats than Gnar in the early game, these kind of things. So it's like, I am stronger than you when you're in mini Gnar form. Because I have extra armor, so I'm even like basically tankier than you were. These kind of things. Like I'm just gonna win this lane early. That's kind of how they're playing a lot of these games. Like, okay, we're gonna pick all champions who have this early game pressure everywhere. And we're seeing that do pretty well. So yeah, the fleet foot work too. So it's like when I trigger this, I can.
Yeah, it was just a little surprising for me. Mostly because I never expected to see a lane Graves ever again.
With the top lane Syndra?
I
Jiaoku.
really want to throw somebody out the window for whoever decided to put top lane Syndra.
Well,
It
remember,
had
it's the X mid laner
sure that doesn't
who's
matter really.
played more Syndra, but also it's into Kennen, right?
And
So, Syndra is good into Kennen because you can match his range, he can't harass you, and every time he tries to ult, you just push him away and leave.
I want you to really think, did Syndra have a single effect in the outcome of the game? Because
It's not the reason they won.
no, it's not even the reason that they even started snowballing. Because when people start thinking about, oh, Syndra's really good into Kennen, yes, when Kennen is mid lane,
It's denying.
right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
The difference here is that Kennen doesn't require as much gold to actually function.
He was plus 38 CS at 15. So
So I'm thinking Syndra was a terrible pick to put top lane. Syndra in general as a side laner, garbage. Because she requires so much gold to function and levels. That's why she's so heavily in the mid lane, because she'll get more waves added on a per minute basis than going in the side lanes, just like mathematically speaking. And so restricting those options just makes her ability to come online into the game slow down significantly. And because of it, she was not relevant for the entire game, despite the fact that RNG was winning the entire time. And you'd think that would spill over, but it really didn't. It was, I think whoever did that choice needs to be defenestrated, because that was pretty useless. You guys would have carried significantly faster if you had a much more relevant pick of the bunch. Like anything relevant for the top lane.
Yeah. But it's just, it has pressure into the Kennen, and whether that's how they were able to do stuff, it's like, sure, maybe the Syndra wasn't the reason why they won, but if, the top having pressure now enables your jungler to be able to get to the Scuttle Crab or get to the Rift Herald, the rest of the map can do more because you have pressure in all your lanes.
Yeah, I don't think that's how that played out though in that game. That game was also another stomp where
So did it really matter that much? It's hard to say, but
yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna go with that one is a weird wash.
There. That's blue side is 7-1 and has
I think it's
90% of the objectives.
Yeah, I think it's also mostly because it was a stomp. 90%, 7 out of all of the games that were a stomp, the only Korean team that was on the red side was Genji, and that's it. So I wouldn't give too much of a thought about that, mostly because it's not as relevant as when there was a drafting difference. Because I was following Twitter at the same time. Some people were saying "Oh, this team has such a huge drafting difference," and I'm like, I don't think it's the case today. Minus RNG, who decided to pick Syndra for whatever the reason. I think most of the teams had very different approaches to their win conditions, and either teams applied theirs early enough, fast enough, and efficiently enough, or the others didn't. And that was the big difference maker here. I think today I have very little to complain, minus Syndra, about the drafting that was done overall. I think the biggest issue I have is primarily the approach to the game more than anything else today. That's not to say that nobody had bad drafting. I just think they're not as egregious as they were in play-ins. Nor do I think that one team had significantly better of a draft over another.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm like, I agreed with your original statement of our, top Korean mid laners had a good day and they all looked good. But it's if you look at the actual stats, which as you know is my thing, is looking at numbers, none of them stand out. It's like, the top CS for mid laners are Maple and Larson, right? Like the top KDA on mid laners are like, Chovy, but then Jensen, Maple, Cryan, Humanoid. Like it's not any of that, but it's like you know, Chovy is like dead last in terms of his team's damage numbers versus any other mid laner who played, including all the losing ones. Like it's not here in the stats. Like they don't have the best CS numbers over anyone else. They don't have the better KDAs. They don't have the better damage numbers. Like Showmaker and Faker are fairly high in damage, but number one is Jensen, BDD, Humanoid, Cryan. Like all up.
BDD is a Korean one.
Oh yeah, true. I just
blanked.
hovered over the name for a second, but it's
no, yeah. I think what the thing that like stats are great to look at for a huge variety of things, but what doesn't get seen is the application of pressure and the way that team fights are like mostly navigated. And
with the exception of Faker, they're all top in ward numbers. There we go.
They're all top in what?
Vision.
Oh, interesting. Like, given how much Faker was literally roaming top in that game, where like it looked like there was nothing that anybody could do against.
It's them and Doinby, who may as well be included in that group. he's the honorary member.
Doinby did get absolutely rocked.
Which it's also worth mentioning though. He had 100% kill participation in that game. 100%.
That's something actually I saw a lot of. I saw a lot of 100% kill participations up until the end of games, which I think is wild.
That's if you lose a game with 100% kill participation, it's like you did what you could.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Your team was not helping you out.
So given that, I think you're segueing to a great question here. Then, do you think that that every Korean team is going to keep up this level of dominance, or do you think that a lot of today was fluke, or somewhere in between?
I think this kind of has to be addressed team by team. Is really the best way to do it. So I think what everyone was kind of looking at for Group A was this game, the Damwon versus FPX, to see kind of who tops this group is the likely expected outcome. So like, okay, now the Damwon won that, they shouldn't have too much of a problem with their next games against Rogue and Cloud9 is the idea, right? So yes, from them. T1 plays EDG still, right? So like that's kind of likely what decides that group, possibly, instead of unless we have upsets, right? So that remains to be seen, but like they could still lose to 100 Thieves. I don't think it's likely, but so T1's a little bit more questionable for me, but possible. Hanwha, I expected them to win. I literally had Fnatic above them, and then I saw the announcement that Upset wasn't playing, and I went and switched it. Is what happened. Which kind of is what it is, right? Like it's kind of sucks for Fnatic, but I was like, yeah, that's the bot lane was like a PowerPoint for them, right? Yeah. It's when you have the like academy player coming up to play in Worlds, like it is what it is. Like, nothing against him or anything. So I don't think Hanwha's gonna I expect them to lose to PSG and stuff, right? So
oh, okay. Yeah, to me, I think that the sheer consistency of how dominant all the Korean teams were, with the exception, I think Genji was the weakest performer in terms of like dominating their game. There were, if I
look at that. Tomorrow, two of our first three games are EDG T1, and then PSG versus Hanwha. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So I'm setting it up for tomorrow.
I also think that EDG was incredibly. This was like the worst performer out of like the 6 stomps.
Okay, I can see that.
It was really weird. Right, I wrote down that EDG was the only team whose team comp I had an issue with.
Okay.
God, if I'm trying to remember.
Other than the Syndra top.
Other than the Syndra top. Yeah.
Um, and I think Group D, it's like, yeah, Gen G had a pretty good game today, but I think that group is still very, very open, especially now that, TL beating Mad brings TL up a bit and brings Mad down a little bit. So now that group is anyone's almost, right? So.
Yeah. I think that's actually
So.
something weirder. Is that Mad I expected to be a top 4 team going into Worlds, and the fact that they lost so spectacularly. And by spectacularly, I don't mean like TL was like super one-sided. I think this was a mess of a game. It was super sloppy on both ends. That shouldn't have played out the way that it did in any way, shape, or form. The fact that the way the game ended was a punish of a punish of a punish of another punish to close out the game is the weirdest game of ping pong we'll ever witness for a bit. It's really hard to like look at how.
Yeah, but when you're playing, when you have like the Twisted Fate and the double teleport and that kind of thing, and like you're going for like, the punish on the disengage with the TF ultimate and stuff, like I can kind of see that being your, okay, they have some low health bars, we can go for this. And then, TL saying, okay, they're split up or anything, we can go, right? Like,
but the fact that a good
that champ
portion
kind
of
of
the
does that
game,
sometimes.
yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the majority of that game went that way, and that's not how that's supposed to work out on a if you're like a semi-competent team, which both of these teams are.
Yeah, but it's kind of also I'm looking like through the team comps, and I'm like, this is kind of the nature of the team comps. It's like Leona and Xin and both can kind of like, if you go in, you're not having as easy time getting out. Like Xin kind of needs his ult to like run away and stuff.
Yeah.
Ezreal, like if you E forward, like you're fine unless you E forward, but he did that a few times, right? And the same the other side, it's like, well, we saw what happened is like when they got engaged on, if like the Jarvan, Jax, and Rel all had to dash away, and now that they've used their dashes, it's like, well, you can't actually turn this fight now because you've used all of your dashes and your engage tools basically to move away.
I think my
right.
issue...
So it's kind of like this: whatever team uses their tools, right, and like backs off, is now in that worst position. So like,
I think my issue came...
they're waiting out a full round of cooldowns.
Yeah. I think my issue comes down to neither of these teams recognized when opting into a fight was a good play.
Yeah.
Right? It was like my issues that I had with Cloud9, which again played the same way. Opting into team fights, even if you know that if it misses you're going to get punished, still requires a degree of knowledge of when you're going too far and understanding of like, hey, we could gain an advantage, but how much more of an advantage we can get from doing something else, just anything else, right? And given the context of most of these plays that were being done by either side, neither team were properly setting up anything and were primarily opting into taking fights that did not benefit one side or the other, and cause some drastic issues for any type of like win conditions that they would have usually set up.
Taking risks that they don't necessarily need to take.
Yeah, exactly. And hence when I'm like, oh, a punish of a punish of a punish of a punish is more like if you're trying to punish something that's a really stupid, but then you overcommit because you're opting into a situation that's not good, and then you get punished for that, and it keeps going on and on and on. You're not taking into account how good any of these two teams are. You're taking into account how bloodthirsty these two teams are. I don't think I was really impressed by any of the North American or European teams today, which is really weird because...
Yeah, I mean, even at the end though, it's like they're saying, okay, we have a 5v4.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm kind of quickly glancing through the replay of that game looking here. So it's like, I can see you going, you know what? We killed Alfari. The Camille is dead. That's a big thing. We could maybe get a 5v4. This is a better fight than we are going to have, right? Okay, that makes sense. Then they go for the engage, and yeah, Armut just kind of dives the tower, and it's like, you're right. That is kind of just him. Like, why'd you
opt into this specific condition of a fight?
Why'd you dive?
Yeah, this was less of like, oh, it's 5v4 and they're returning, and you should take a fight so that nothing happens. It's more like, hey, look at the current scenario. Does taking a fight under these conditions actually do you any good? Yes? No? No? Probably not.
Because the Jax has like the steel caps is his only armor. Like he's not tanky at all because he's so like the tower shots kind of do like a third of his health. Just doof, doof. Yeah.
It was it's kind of disappointing mostly, and I don't think that this is going to carry through. And if it does carry through, God, the hell.
Yeah.
Because Mad, I think, was the only team that people were like, oh yeah, Mad's gonna get out. Mad is 100% getting out. And seeing this, you're like, okay, so when everybody was like, oh, it could be anybody's game, now is it really anybody's game? Like, what's going on? Is there any particular trend that you saw?
What else do I have on my list? Kind of mentioned a lot of them. I thought Showmaker went Conqueror and Longsword on his Leblanc. That's interesting.
He went Conqueror Longsword on his Leblanc, and I missed that. How did I miss that? And okay.
At least he built a Longsword. Let me just check the exact thing. It might not have been a starting item. I made a note of it. I'm just trying to find the game again. Yeah, let's go back to the first game. Which, what I was saying, he's playing into Galio.
Oh, okay, that tracks. Never mind. I was like,
so yeah, he went. Yeah, he's starting in Longsword. He started Longsword refillable and Conqueror. So he's basically just in lane, and he's just when the Galio is going to CS at like level 2, he's just constantly autoing the Galio.
Oh yeah,
with the Longsword start.
No, that's great.
I was like, that actually makes sense. But I just thought it was a really cool, like not even like just like the Doran's blade, but just the Longsword. Yeah, then he immediately built the Lost Chapter. He just sat on the Longsword.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And then he probably sold it at some point because it's easier to sell the Longsword for more gold, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
and it also has just flat out more damage, and you're not going to benefit from any of the health, the lifesteal. Jeez, I don't remember the new word for it.
The lifesteal from the Omniman, whatever. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because so it's missing from his inventory. I don't see it. Okay, he bought his. He sold it when he bought his Ludens at 10:30 or 11 minutes, kind of thing.
All right.
But just start with the Longsword and then sell it. That's a thing.
I've got a prediction question for you. Do you think we're going to have the same amount of stomps tomorrow?
I think the proper way to answer that question is also to glance at the schedule to see if there's any. So I did already look and see, like, ooh, we got some interesting games there that we're talking about. Like T1 EDG, I expect that to be a bit closer. Rogue, Damwon, Kia. Okay, that's one potential stomp. PSG versus Hanwha. Bold statement, potential stomp. You know who I'm thinking it is from. RNG Fnatic, potential stomp. Cloud9 FPX, potential stomp. Yeah, I'm seeing at most 4, I think.
Okay.
So
50% rate.
So I'm probably expecting only like 2 or 3. Maybe if one of the other games that we're not expecting to be a stomp suddenly is, like, you know, whatever, Genji's gets mad, it actually is just bad or something. but I don't think so, but possible.
Um, I want to talk about something interesting more than like that I want to just get your thoughts on, mostly because like we've talked about like our ranking right before World started, and I talked about how Cloud9 out of all of the major teams was like the worst team out of all of the legacy teams going in.
Okay.
And that Rogue was like not far behind. And right now, out of all the rankings, the two worst teams that I would have ranked, even regardless of Cloud9's performances getting into groups, is Rogue and Cloud9, both in the same groups. Seeing their performance compared to literally everybody else today, and again, it's day one. Speculation is really easy to do on day one results more than anything else.
Yep.
Do you think that their performance is going to get any better, especially given the group that they're
Oh
in?
yeah, this game. I was like, I really don't like Rogue's team comp. Like, yeah, sure it works in terms of like, yeah, the Rumble plus Kiana is a nice combo, and like
Mm-hmm.
Twisted Fate's not bad, and like Lucian Nami's a good lane. It's like they picked stuff for lane, which is like whatever. But when you look at the team comp as a whole, as a bigger picture, it's like your entire team has basically no bonus health or anything between you. Like, there's not a single champion who can like even remotely resemble anything like Rumble has a shield maybe like, but like Rumble is your front line. It's just so it's like even if this team comp is like okay, if they're trying to do like a Baron or something, like they're going to struggle and be taking crazy amounts of damage attempting a Baron kind of thing, right? Like
Yeah.
I just really don't like these comps that it's like sure if you just have like even if it's like you have a Xin Zhao or something, it's like okay he has lifesteal and he can kind of junglers like
Create some
innately with
sustain.
smite,
Yeah.
yeah, it creates some sustain. It's like okay, if you're trying to fight a Baron, you put the Xin Zhao on it, he heals back a bit with his Q and stuff. It's like okay, you're not just all dying to Baron or something. It's like this team comp is like well, also has the issue of like even if you have like a 10k gold lead with this team comp, you can kind of just all get Gnar into Misfortune alted and just die just
That that
immediately.
that did happen.
Yeah,
That did happen.
as we saw. So it's like, and like I've been playing a lot of Nami lately. And it's you just you kind of need to have someone like in front of you because like some of these champions like Twisted Fate has some range and he wants to build the rapid fire and stuff, right? Like to get some range, sure, but you got melee champions, you got immobile champions. It's not like you're a squishy champion thing with like everybody's like, you know, LeBlanc and a
Mm-hmm.
an Ezreal, like all these different things that are like we all can run away really fast or we're all really slippery. It's like you have immobile squishy champions, a whole bunch of them, relatively.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't like that as a team comp.
I think the problem is that their way to approach it was like as if they had a sustained tank. By no means do I think that this composition is terrible.
Yeah.
Um, I do think that there's a world in which this works. It's just can't use it to pressure Baron. It's one of those things where like you have to ace the team to get the Baron to be
Well,
worth it, right?
also your non-melee wave clear
Mm-hmm.
rely on Rumble and Lucian ults to wave clear. Like those are your two best wave clear tools.
Yeah,
So
correct.
we saw them constantly like when Cloud9 started pushing stuff in, it's like they had to use the Rumble and Lucian ults to wave clear, which means their team fight is now much weaker because those two things are now used up just clearing minion waves.
So imagine how goofy it is that they still had a 10k gold lead, and that the ways that they were approaching it had nothing to do with wave clear or neutral objectives. It had more to do with jungle fights, which is skirmishing and jungle fight is
Yep.
literally what this composition is designed to do, and I'm totally fine with that. So long as you're not 100% ignoring neutral objectives. I wrote here. Oh yeah, and then I kind of like noted that like rogues, despite their composition, was still able to like pull off a better setups and vision across the board for every stage of this game. And still somehow Rogue was not able to consistently secure leads and kept getting Cloud9 moments to come back. And I think it's super unacceptable as Rogue to draft this way. That's pretty bold. I don't hate this draft, but nor do I think that this is an easy draft to take, especially given the caliber of a team that Rogue is. It was not a good idea.
And another thing that would I would say this is unacceptable in silver basically. Let's see here. Does anybody have grievous wounds? I am at 25 minutes. Nope. I am at 28 minutes, and
the game ends literally 3 minutes later.
Here's the Nami has an Oblivion Orb. Okay, so 27 minutes, the Nami has an Oblivion Orb. They're playing into Xin Zhao, Sylas, and Yuumi.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody has grievous wounds until 27 minutes.
Yep.
Now, Nami with Chemtech, you can you can apply it to your team, sure, once you get that item, but I don't think she finished the full Chemtech. It's you're playing into 3 big healers. Normally it's okay, if you even just see the Yuumi, it's hey, maybe someone at least one person grab it so we have it early, kind of thing. But with all 3 of those, Gore Drinkers and Zhao, a Sylas, and a Yuumi, really? Are you just trying to make the game harder for yourself?
I think I really want you to take that into mind, and then I want you to really think about 31 minutes and 50 seconds into the game.
Yep.
I want you to really look at where Perks is on the map.
Get to that spot.
Do you see how they have no turrets?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Do you see how there's 5 of them pushing in the bot side, about to close out the game?
Yep.
Do you see how Perks commits to
the top
tower the entire time? I really want you to really think about how
I'd be pinging my top laner
yo, what
missing ping, yeah.
And I'm here going, wow, Rogue made a fuck ton of really shitty decisions, and yet somehow they were still better at building up leads. They were smarter than Cloud9 at building up leads. And Cloud9 is just yeah, we know how to do these things, and we never do them.
Yep.
I remember earlier into the day when the T1 versus DFM game happened, and everybody was like, oh shit, that's really nonsense. That was crazy one-sided. And then Twitter was like, shit, knowing that everybody thought DFM was good because Cloud9 was doing good, but DFM was doing significantly better. And they're like, oh shit, NA prospects is really bad. And I'm like, guys, no. Cloud9 is just garbage compared to literally all of the other teams here. You cannot stress this.
You know what we
enough.
talked about last video? Where we were you see how they're all on different sides and they're setting up for flanks, but they don't all go in at the same time.
Yeah.
If we look at Rogue's comp, they do have that great AoE damage and they have great potential. The Twisted Fate, just, hey, I'm going to gold card someone, we lock them down, we can burst that person. Cool. You know what that comp is absolutely terrible into? Proper flanks.
Flanking. And they never
Cloud9 kept trying to. They kept setting up the flank, but it was either Twisted Fate gold carded the flanker and then all of Rogue turned on that person, which we saw, or Rogue just engaged on the rest of the team and just all ran forward. It's Cloud9 never actually went in from 2 sides at the same time. Because when it's the Nami, Rumble, Kiana, even the Kiana with her ultimate and stuff, she can't deal with multiple sides at the same time.
No.
Not a single champion of their team can properly change directions. They want to all go the same way. They're all going forward. We're all looking forward.
Yep.
Just get off a flank. A properly executed flank. Doesn't matter what you are. Doesn't matter what champion you are. Just a properly executed flank by anything, and you can set up a good flight.
And I think this just I really want to hammer home that Rogue by no means should have any chance against FunPlus or Damwon. By no means. Cloud9 has even less of a chance. If you put Cloud9 and Rogue in any of the other 4 groups,
Their last place.
they're last place. Both of them are last place. This is straight up. You should expect Rogue and Cloud9 to fight for last place and be stomped every other game. Like, that's just the darn truth of the matter.
Yeah, and like a lot of Rogue's kills are really just in the jungle or like going after one particular person because
Yep.
Cloud9 doesn't group up and like doesn't play together.
Mm-hmm. Rogue drafted for the team that they're going to face.
Yeah, but that's valid. You just Cloud9 doesn't properly group up.
Yep.
And
make some of the stupidest decisions of every
even
team.
when they're all coming for a dragon or something, Perks is like, I'm going to kill the scuttle crab while the you know what I mean?
Oh god.
It's like every time.
I'm just so baffled. I'm just really baffled by like how far Cloud9 has gone.
Yeah. But it's like even like I'm at like 24 minutes. Like, okay, look, 4 members of Cloud9 got together to run at somebody. And Fudge is there, but he's kind of just like sitting in mid lane. He's not actually like walking over to try to help them, even. He's just kind of sitting in mid lane while 4 other members of his team are running people down.
I think it's just so bizarre and such a fundamental issue of Cloud9 that I don't think this could ever be fixed overnight, let alone before like groups ends. Like they have straight up 1 more week of Worlds left before they're out. And I'm saying not maybe they're out. It's when they're out. Right? And I want to see maybe some gleam of hope. But I don't. And
it's like you're right, because like I just went forward again, 25 minutes. Hey, look, they're trying to defend a tower, and it's like, Perks is top lane again, and they're just split up 1-3-1 constantly. And now I guess to a certain extent, that's Rogue actually prepped the waves properly and pushed them in, so that Cloud9 had to deal with them.
Yep.
But it's realistically, you're knowing the players. It's like they're going, Perks and Fudge are like prioritizing the CS. They're going like, whoa, there's like 20 minions there. There's no possible way, no matter what's going on. Like, they could be hitting my Nexus, but like that's 20 minions.
It's just jeez. All right. So before we
they're good players individually.
Sure.
Do you want to maybe finish our just going over the rest of our predictions quickly?
Sure. Yeah. If we want to go through our predictions, right? So, and I do want to preface that like Josh is likely to write his predictions before he gets through his groups, so we're not gonna do anything regarding that. But
we won't have seen the games. Yeah.
So between Connor and I, we literally flipped our 3rd and 4th place and our 1st and 2nd place.
Most every group. But other than that, we can agree who the top 2 and the bottom 2 are in most groups.
Yeah. So just for preface, we're just going to go through top 2 and bottom 2 because I don't think either or is going to matter too much regarding 1st and 2nd place. We've got FPX and DK for Group A. Wow, really?
That's the top 2.
We've got.
It doesn't matter who's who. One of us believes in FPX and one of us believes in Dev. It kind of doesn't matter. Yep. Both arguments are probably valid. We saw, FPX lose today, but like,
it's one of the stomps are usually like subject to being re-stomped back the other direction. Yeah. We got. This is the only one we both agree on in Group B is EDG first, T1 second, and then we were like, DFM and 100 Thieves. You could make either case for either or.
Yeah, like I don't think 100 Thieves is, guaranteed to be DFM or anything by any means. They're just, 55-45 kind of thing, right? Like maybe what I put it. So if you're 55-45 the other way, that's totally valid.
Yeah. We both also agreed RNG PSG first place and second place. We also then put Homalife Fnatic in last, but I put Fnatic above Homalife. But
I was like, I had them third, and then when I heard Upset wasn't playing, I was like, I think that's enough for me to drop him to fourth.
Do want to preface that Upset may return to groups.
Okay.
So like some of the announcements had been misconstrued or misunderstood. He's not out of Worlds for the entirety of groups.
Guaranteed.
He may come back. Whether or not that's the case is unknown, and they're literally respecting the privacy and not divulging any
Okay,
other
that is
info.
good.
Yeah. And then we had Group D, where Gen G and Mad are the top two. Who you think is who? I'm starting to regret my decision to put Mad in first place, but it's also day one. We have yet to see what's going to happen. And then we put Team Liquid in LNG for third and fourth place, also still flipping between
That's
the two.
funny. So we're in complete agreement on the 8 teams reaching quarters.
Yes, 100%.
8 for 8, complete agreement. Which is funny because I'd say maybe only like 10 to 20% of people have PSG in their top 8, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I've noticed a lot of people having them in like last, looking at pick'ems.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, it's just something I saw and I was like, really?
I was
like
actually
a lot of people have them in like last.
I was actually really disappointed by the performance today. And I think it's because it's still their first day, and PSG as a full 5-person unit this is the first time they do an international event. In the last 2 years, they have not had their full 5 roster at the international event. They've had to do some substitution in some way, shape, or form for at least one player. And the one player that's been consistently substituted, I had high praise for. And boy, do I have egg on my face from that first day performance. Unified straight up made it very easy for RNG to play out the rest of that game.
Yeah, but even like glancing through some of this stuff, it's like RNG got away with like less than 100 health.
Yeah.
A couple of times, like if we go to like the bot lane play in the beginning, it's like, what is it, 2 minutes? Let's see that. Okay, that's, yeah, I guess it's more on Kyron, but like they didn't win by much. Like a lot of these, it wasn't like, oh yeah, they got a clean pick, clean gank or anything like that. It's like,
yeah,
okay, you probably survived that tower shot, but like it only left you with 75-ish health. So like, if you landed one more auto attack kind of thing, you probably were dead there. And that kind of happened a bunch. And then like once RNG has the gold lead, you're like, okay,
yeah, they're just
RNG is a good enough team that when you give them that gold lead, they're going to win, right? So I didn't really see this game as like too much of like a knock against PSG or anything.
I think it's mostly because Unified performed poorly this game, and Unified is literally the benchmark of their team. Like he's both of the PCS teams are heavily reliant on their bot laners.
Yep.
And Unified not playing to the level that at least I expected, or the level of a lot of other people expected, is only a tad disappointing. I do think that the rest of the game is not on him because he played well after laning phase. It's just that it was one of those things where like it did not help, and RNG definitely took advantage of the situations to like do the proper setups. Once they had the gold lead, they knew how to snowball it in a way that was like super efficient, as given for like what we expect from RNG specifically, at least.
Yeah, my big thing at this game, which I saw, which kind of bugged me, is like Maple had a great game. Yes. And like, the quadra kill was great, but like after the tower dive, which I was looking at, it's 6. It's like they dive river 640, and then Maple comes in, and there's 3 of them, and their combined health is maybe 500 between the 3 of them. And he goes in and he dashes in, and then they all kind of dash away, and he leaves, right? And I'm like, he still had flash. I can see why you didn't do it, but you're a Tryndamere. Let me double check before I say this. He has ult, yes. He had his ultimate ready. He's level 6. He's a Tryndamere, and he has flash. Their combined health is maybe 500. I think if you flashed and ulted in there, you probably got 3 kills. And at that point, the game was 3-0. Like right at the beginning, when they just finished that tower dive. Like I'm looking at that, like he's near them and he's got flash and ult.
Yeah, I think a lot
It's
of
possible. It's risky,
yeah.
but like
Sometimes you have to look at the decisions that are made and really be cognizant that this is still day one of groups. This is literally the
yeah, for
first
sure.
game of the vast majority of these teams.
Yeah, and I
Right?
don't think that's a thing where it's like, oh, he's bad because he didn't flash ult in there. No, flash ulting in is like, to 3 people should not be the expected. Like, why didn't you flash ult into 3 people? Right?
Yeah, no, that should
No
not be
one
the
says that.
expected go-to.
But
Yeah. I feel like sometimes teams don't take enough risks, but it's hard to
yeah,
fault them on not taking risks, especially given that some teams that do take unnecessary risks lose so spectacularly bad. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Hint, hint,
Okay, so
Rogue and
he
Cloud9. Um,
he would have had okay, he had 3 seconds on his dash, and then 4 seconds on his slow. So those would have been up maybe for the end of that. He had flash and ultimate. He has an iron spike whip active. His AD is.
I don't think that would have been a great move. I think that would have been like slim margins. You would have taken one or two.
You know what? As I paused it, when I'm saying like this is where he should have flashed in, is also when his lethal tempo lethal tempo procced to give him the bonus attack speed.
Oh shit.
So if he flashed in there, he would have had his lethal tempo fully active. So I think it definitely like look at that. I'm like, oh, his lethal tempo is active. He totally would. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, that's it. That's just because it procced. It was like he hit it on originally, and then the 1.5 seconds was up, so his lethal tempo was running. So if he flashes in there, has his ultimate, goes in, he's got like, 1.5 attack speed already. I think he wins that. But that's a very specific play.
Yeah, and it
But I do
requires
think he
that
would
the
have won
other
that.
team does not have any coordination on how to how to peel that.
Ah,
Nah. Um,
I'm gonna
I want
count
to
enemy
take
cool.
stock of. Uh, do you think that the way that these teams, do you think that despite the fact that this is day one still has like hold your horses, don't go too much in panic mode. You don't actually know the end result, despite the fact that you and I are in full agreement what the end result is going to be. Um, do you think that this is what we should be expecting from games now on, like stomps of this nature? Or do you think this is more indicative of day one? Like, I know I just asked you how many stomps would you expect tomorrow, but do you think, like, for the entirety of groups, as groups keeps going, do you think stomps are what we should be expecting?
Um, no, I don't think so. I definitely think there'll be a few each day, like in a couple of these games, and um, there will be some stomps, but I don't think there's going to be like 6 out of 8, maybe 3, 4 at the most, which is still a lot relatively. But
I
I
think,
also just checked.
yeah.
Jarvan didn't have a spell for another 7 seconds, a single spell. Twisted Fate had just already used his gold card. Like, they didn't have any peel. I'm done. That's it.
Okay. I think that it's going to be much more common to have stomps, and I think it's due to the nature of the
You
way
do
that
think so?
they did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's because of the nature of the way they did picks for the groups. Because it used to be that, like, the pool 2 seed literally was like, there's pool 1 is the top seed of, like, the 4 regions that they want to be top seeds, and then pool 2 is literally everybody else. And so they would be a larger mix-up of things where some groups were much more competitive and some groups were super, super easy. And they changed it to split it into 3 pools instead. And so we've gotten a much more stratified set of groups that are like, oh, clear demarcation lines of like, here's our top 2, here's our bottom 2. And so, like, it's no surprise to me that we've gotten so many stomps, even if it was slightly unexpected. Like, it wasn't totally unexpected, given the nature of how they changed the way that they do group picks, but it's slightly unexpected.
Um,
Yeah, because there's a way for you to get the second seed of both China and Korea and be the first seed of North America in that group, or that used to be the case.
yeah.
And it's totally not the case now. um, I've got one thought that I'm going to lead into a question.
Okay.
Given the nature of how do I want to word this? Given the nature of, like, we've seen a number of new picks being brought up, and how this was kind of like out of the blue. Do you think teams are going to become much more willing to pick up new things in an attempt to gain more wins, especially given how many stomps there were? Do you think that teams are more willing to pick up new stuff or try new things? And this is also a lead up into your count of how many champions have been played so far or been present so far in Worlds. Like, do you think that people are going to pick up more to try to, like, gain an upper hand, like the unexpected twists type of scenario?
I think we'll definitely have some. I think kind of what happens after the first days, a lot of teams went like, okay, here's what we think is good, or here's what we're going to try. And now that they've kind of seen some of the competition, it's like, I think a lot of teams would be like, okay, like say your, 100 Thieves is going to be like, here's what worked for Damwon, let's do that, right? So it's like, hey, they made the Yuumi work, let's try, you know what I mean? Like we were saying, so we're seeing what the other good teams are doing and trying to play to what they're doing or these kind of things. So kind of matching the established meta and saying, okay, what was good today? Like the teams that didn't play the Graves top might say, hey, let's quickly go home today and try a whole bunch of Graves top and see if this is good because it's been working for some of these top teams, right? So I think there's that level of, okay, let's adapt what everybody else is doing. And I don't think like the counter adapt to be like, oh, so you're trying our Graves top? Well, we know exactly what it's terrible against, right? I don't think that happens for another day or two.
Okay.
I think that happens end of group stage / beginning.
Okay. So like
So
on
like
their
I think like tomorrow, maybe the next day or two, is everybody kind of adapting to say like the teams that aren't playing Yuumi pick it up, the teams that aren't playing Graves top pick that up. The teams that whatever aren't playing LeBlanc and Twisted Fate if there is any.
But every team's
right, they're adapting to, okay, let's play what everybody else is playing and learn what's good. If there's mid laners who haven't played Tryndamere, they'll okay, let's kind of figure that out or get used to that. And that's where the team starts saying, okay, if they lock in Tryndamere, do we have a good counter pick to it? If they lock in Graves top, do we have a good counter? If they're playing a Yuumi lane, what is our good counter to the Yuumi lane, right? So that's where we start seeing the interesting stuff is like as specific counter picks.
Yeah, okay. You're saying so every group's round 2 days is when we're gonna see some mix-ups.
Yeah.
Because like the round 2 days, there's 4 days of 6 games, one day for each group, is how they usually play it out.
There's kind of 2 chances there for there to be a match because we have the counter pick. We also have the what works well with it. Because like I was saying with the Seraphine, like the Seraphine would be a bit of a surprise to a lot of people. I was expecting it, but that is saying, okay, because Yumi's in the meta, because this works so well together, let's do this kind of thing, right? So it's being played. If it works in the mid lane, it would be saying, okay, let's do Seraphine, Yuumi, Misfortune together, right?
Yeah.
Try out that, right?
And I know we haven't had the chance to talk about the best of 5s that happen in play-ins, although I don't think there's much to say about those, mostly because the expected results came through. But after day 1 of groups and the best of 5s, what are our champion present count?
The issue is that play-ins and group stage are in a separate document from all the websites I can find. So I have to actually go through and combine them.
Let me see if
Unless I find a website that combines them, which is gotta be. I'm just not seeing it currently.
Found one.
You did? Okay.
This is tournament play-ins, and yeah, It shows 81 champions
You
contested.
did it so fast. I just wasn't looking in the right place.
It's in the LOL fandom one. Let me just give that to you. Boom. It's the one that I use for all my stats. We had
Oh, it does.
one
Okay.
new champion.
That's it.
Yep, you said yours 80 last time. There's 81 now.
I think I said 80 was like the previous year, like 2020.
So you mentioned that we had at 80 by the time that the halfway point of play-ins had happened
Open notes.
before the best of
I,
fives.
I don't want to say numbers and then be like, 80 was 2020. We were at 74.
Oh, we were at 74. All right, cool.
We're at 74.
So
with the
7
previous number.
champions have been added.
Yeah. So, because I was gonna say we had the I think the Rumble was new. I think the Yasuo was new. Was there Jin previously?
Jin? Yeah, I think there was a
Possibly.
Jin
Yeah, there
previously.
was.
Yeah.
I think Yumi was banned once.
Yeah.
So not that counts in play-ins.
There's an interesting, if you go down to the bottom of the list, there's an interesting set of like, oh, Varus was banned. I don't know why Varus was banned, but Varus was banned.
This is some of the throw-off bans, yeah. Because that always kind of happens, like if you're including those things, because especially like, I don't know, some teams occasionally will do like, we get our bans to spell TSM or something. Like that's a thing that people have done.
Not in a long time, but yes.
No, but it has been a thing that has happened. So, or it used to be the thing of like, you just ban Teemo and Amumu.
There were 5 Kassadin bans and no picks. That's fun.
Was it banned against UOL?
It was banned against UOL twice. It was not banned almost every other time against UOL. It was banned against a bunch of other teams. So yeah, so there were 7 champions added to the whole thing.
Interesting.
Which is, yeah, I think that's interesting. Given such a jump, do you still stand by reaching 90 this year?
I think we'll beat the record, which is 2019 at 92. I think it'll end up about 94, 95.
Okay.
Like there's a couple more champions in existence.
I'm
still think there's a few things off this list. Like, I wasn't sure. I wasn't expecting it, but I was like, is the new Sona rework actually good? Because that's live for Worlds and stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
Soraka is really good in solo queue with the counter Grievous wounds. It's like, so some of these enchanters might get played, for an example. Like, someone's probably going to pull out Nash. It's reasonable to say someone's going to be like, hey, this team comp works well with an Ashe. Like,
maybe. I'm still beholden that we'll never get higher than 88 this year.
88?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll see. We'll see what the next couple of days brings on. With that, to our audience, you guys let us know what you think about the day so far. How did you like play-ins? There were not much to think about or discuss about in terms of play-ins, unfortunately, because groups straight up invalidated a lot of what happened in play-ins. And let us know what you think. Do you think like day one is a time to spell doom, or like do you still hold out some hope? You let us know down there in the comments down below, and we really appreciate those of you who watch. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video. We're likely to see all of you again on Thursday, which is when first round of groups ends, and we'll see you then. Ignore the terrible sentence ending. With that, bye.
We'll see you then.